But listen, I gotta get going. Make a few stops and shit. I just went to go see my mom. Came straight here.
All right, man.
I don't want you to die.
Now, is Rock alive in the timeline of Power? And if she is, could we see her in any of the new shows in the current timeline? It's a question we've spoken about heavily over the past couple of years, based on something Kanan said back in Power. It's a topic that we do briefly touch on here and there when we talk about various different plots and storylines from Raising Kanan. However, I was reading an interview from Sascha Penn, and I realized there's one quote which actually may hint at answering this very question. So, word for word, verbatim, this is what Sascha Penn had to say on the ending of Raising Kanan as a whole, and then we're going to run through how it links back to what Kanan said back in Season 2 Episode 2. I believe that we answer almost all the questions, but we don't answer every single question. I think it's a real emotional journey. It's a worthy ending to the story that we set out to tell. I don't think there's a false step, it feels all genuine, and I also think many surprises will come. I think the people will be stunned to find out how the story ends up, but I also hope everybody feels satisfied. I believe they will. This is not one of those endings which is open to interpretation. I think we put a punctuation point at the end of it, and I think that's something that was always important to me, telling a complete story. So that's what Sascha Penn had to say in an interview at the end of Raising Kanan Season 4, and it's the last part of that quote that's really important. This is not one of those endings that is open to interpretation. Now if you look at the ending of Raising Kanan Season 4, now that was deliberately done, that was kind of a ending open to interpretation. Some will think that Kanan pulled the trigger on Rock. Some will believe that Jukebox may have come in and maybe fired a warning shot to save Rock. Some also think that Kanan saw someone behind Rock and that's who he shot. That's an ending definitely open to interpretation. But the ending of Season 5, Sascha Penn says, it's an ending which won't be open to interpretation. It's going to have an ending that nobody can doubt. Although knowing Power fans, because some still believe that Ghost is alive, I'm sure some will probably twist it in some way or some shape or form. That I have no doubt. But in my personal view, I do believe Sascha Penn. The ending will put a full stop to a lot of storylines, but not all. He mentioned he ain't gonna answer all of the questions, and this Rock situation may be one, which could potentially be left open with a question mark, or maybe he does give us some sort of answer. But just before we dive deeper into this topic, let's have a listen one more time and revisit what Kanan mentioned back in Power Season 2, Episode 2.
But listen, I gotta get going. Make a few stops and shit. I just went to go see my mom. Came straight here.
All right, man.
Now, just to give this scene a bit more context, Kanan served 10 years out of 15 in prison. He was stopped and caught with product and most likely a gun. He was stopped because of a faulty tail light. But as we know how the story goes, it was Tasha and Ghost who set Kanan up by unscrewing the bulb. They wanted him to get out the way so Ghost could take over, and also because Ghost couldn't bring himself to kill Kanan like he was able to kill Breeze. I'm sure once Power Origins gets going, they'll dive a little deeper into this relationship between Kanan and Ghost, because it did sound like and it did seem like they were very close. Ghost definitely thought a lot about Kanan and looked up to Kanan. You only have to look at who he turned to later on in Season 1 for advice when it came to who was hitting his organization. He turned to Kanan Stark. Prior to Power, we also heard about some Trenton beef, and again, we learned that it was Kanan who advised him how to deal with that situation. So, this relationship between Kanan and Ghost, Season 1 of Power Origins, maybe 2 or 3. Whether all seasons are 18 episodes or little less, we also don't know how many seasons they're going to have for sure. But one thing we can definitely be sure of, they really are going to dive deep into this relationship, along with of course Tommy, Breeze, Curtis St. Patrick, Angela Valdez and a lot of others. They're in it for the long haul when it comes to Power Origins, and it definitely is going to be worth the wait. But he spent 10 years prior to this moment in prison, and at the time the only family we knew that Kanan had was Sean Stark. We hadn't even heard about Jukebox yet. Fast forward to Season 2, he then kept the secret that Kanan was out of prison, right up until the moment when he walked into Ghost's penthouse suite.
Damn. Y'all did better without me than y'all would have dealt with me on the street.
Now this look between Ghost and Tasha, that's the moment that a lot of us should have clocked on, that they weren't exactly happy to see him. They were definitely surprised and caught off guard. This is someone they set up and someone they thought had 5 years left on his prison term. But once Ghost and Kanan got reacquainted, once he saw Tommy, that's when he dropped the line about his moms and he came straight here. Now I do think first things first when it comes to Kanan, we have to remember who this character is. This is one of Power's biggest lies and manipulators, and watching what went down when he was a teenager through Snaps, Pop and also Rock, I don't think anybody can rewatch Power and be surprised if he was just outright lying. That's number one. He He could have literally just been bullshitting. That can't be taken out of the equation. Number 2. I don't think they would have actually had Raising Kanan in mind back when they actually filmed this scene for season 2, let alone a Young Ghost and Tommy show or even Power Book 2 Ghost. I mean, how young was Tariq St. Patrick? It does seem as if it was a kind of a line that was just thrown in there, that they never really got a chance or something they never really came back to or went deeper, just like they did with Tommy Egan.
Tell your mom just said hello?
She's getting worse, you know. Can't be out there all the time.
Back in season 1, episode 1, Tommy made reference to his mom's getting worse, and later on, we were then introduced to Kate. From then on, we were able to connect the dots in terms of what he meant, the status of their relationship and so on. But with Kanan's line about his mom's, they never got back around to it. Now number 3, how it's open to interpretation. This is a plot, storyline, conversation, call it what you will. At this moment in time, at least, it's open to interpretation. Something similarly to what Sascha Penn said. He said the ending of Raising Kanan won't be open to interpretation. I personally believe what they did with the ending of Raising Kanan season 4, now that's an ending that definitely is open to interpretation. But this particular conversation that we had back in Power season 2, episode 2, because of what we've seen in Raising Kanan and also because of how Patina Miller is as Rock, I genuinely think Patina Miller and how she's portrayed her character as Rock, for me she is top 3 in the Power universe without a shadow of a doubt. But because of her character, who she is, and how popular she is, a lot of people have latched onto this kind of quote from Kanan back in season 2, and probably want her to be alive in the current timeline because of what was said back in Power. However, just like I mentioned, this is something that is definitely open to interpretation at this moment in time, because I highly doubt that they had Raising Kanan in mind when they wrote this script for Power 202, but I'm sure it's something that Sascha Penn will be well aware of. He'll know the conversations that the Power fans are having online. He'll be seeing the comments on social media through X, Instagram, and whatever social media platform, the questions, the breakdowns on YouTube, and it's something that he'll definitely have the answers for later on, that's for sure. Now, considering we're discussing how this particular conversation with what Kanan said is open to interpretation, my interpretation is Kanan actually went to go see Rock at her grave, just like he went to go see Grandma Joyce Thomas towards the end of season 4. That, in my opinion, is the most logical explanation, and what I think. Because we know how Power ends. Can we genuinely sit here after watching 4 seasons of Raising Kanan, seeing everything that Rock's done? Can we genuinely say she deserves a happy ending or a different kind of ending to either ending up dead or in jail? In my opinion, it's either one of the two. And I do think the conversation she actually had with Stefano Marchetti back in season 3 when she got back into the game after she was out was the foreshadow to tell us how it's going to end for Rock.
But just so we're clear, now that you're back in, there's only one way out.
So, in my personal opinion, I do think Rock is dead in the current timeline. I personally believe she's alive after the season 4 ending, but I don't think she's going to survive come the end of season 5. Now, I could actually be totally wrong. Rock actually could very well be alive in the timeline. She could actually be maybe in a nursing home. She might be alive, she might survive come the end of season 5. She might get up and disappear because she's left with no choice. She might even take a deal from law enforcement, who knows. Rock is someone who genuinely is capable of anything, so I'm not ruling anything out when it comes to Rock. But I personally believe that she is dead in the current timeline. She'll die in season 5, and Kanan meant that he just went to go visit her in a grave. Now, on my particular interpretation, it really would be quite crazy if Raising Kanan did actually see a flash forward, where we do see 50 Cent back as the older Kanan. In the timeline of around season 2, episode 1 or 2 of OG Power, we see the older Kanan going to visit Rock's grave and having a conversation with her, laying a rose just like he did with Grandma Joyce Thomas. Them actually answering this question in a flash forward and bringing it back to the timeline of Power. I personally think that would be really great. You'd not only answer the question on what Kanan said back in Power, but you also get the opportunity to add even more depth by bringing it back to the older Kanan and the timeline of Power. We'd have the older Kanan speaking to Rock's grave, seeing what he has to say in that moment after he'd spent 10 years in prison, hearing him make reference to some of what we saw in Raising Kanan, seeing what Kanan says from his perspective after he's a little older and after he's pretty much lost everything bar jukebox, at least at that moment in time anyway. I think it'd be quite cool to see 50 back as the older Kanan just to fill this small gap in Power. I mean, when you kind of think about season 2 again of Power, when you think about it, Kanan used to disappear quite a lot in season 2. There was even a moment where Ghost grabbed Sean and even questioned him, where's his pops? And even at the time, I did question, where did Kanan go for that period of time in season 2? So that's just some food for thought. Now, the only real time when we also heard Kanan talk about one of his parents or family besides Jukebox was also in conversation with Tommy in season 5.
So when you find out you got a dad?
I don't know. Not long ago.
So don't trip and don't waste it. I ain't never had one. I don't know, go to a ball game or some shit.
And watching Raising Kanan, it is kind of true. He never really had a relationship with Detective Howard. Rock robbed him of his relationship with his pops, but there was no Howard. I don't think Uncle Marvin or Lou will be alive in the current timeline either, although in Power, never say never, but I do think it is highly unlikely. And later on, he did also kill Duke.
The suspect, also found dead at the scene, is Kanan Stark. He has no known surviving next of kin. His son Sean was murdered, and that crime was never solved.
No known relatives. Now, they could always retcon some storylines, which I personally am not the biggest fan of, but let's wait and see. Let's see if there is a case to be made where Rock is alive in the current timeline or Power when all is said and done. But based on Sascha Penn's quotes, him wanting to deliver a complete story by the time season 5 comes to an end, before he moves on to producing Power Origins, I personally believe we're going to have the answer one way or another. One way or another, we'll definitely be able to say, yep, Kanan was just lying, or he actually meant he went to go see her at her grave, or maybe he went to go see her in a nursing home. By the end of season 5, we'll have the answer for sure, and then we can move on to Power Origins, move the story over to Ghost and Tommy without having all of these questions kind of just lingering over. And who knows, maybe even with a few potential characters who are left over from Raising Kanan. I really am intrigued to see what Sascha Penn means by surprises. Definitely a little too early to be predicting what those surprises are. I'm sure we're going to be in for at least 1 or 2 WTF moments. But with that being said, let me know what you think down below in the comment section. The floor is now yours. Before we get to season 5, before they answer the question, let me know whether you think Rock is alive or dead in the current timeline, and why. I do think the why is also quite important. So drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section on Sascha Penn's comments, and also your interpretations of Kanan's comments back in Power. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.